So after 392 chapters, nearly 400 chapters, the Black Clover story in the manga has finally come to an end. And wow, has it been a journey? Wow, has it been a mission? Because this thing, it's crazy to see. At the end of the day, the story has went through so many different obstacles, and we've reached the end, people, at the very least for the manga side of things. And honestly, before we even get started and talking about everything that happened, all of the answers we got regarding Asta's fate, regarding the status of Wizard King, his battle with Yuno, and everything that happened with the Black Bulls and the Clover Kingdom as a whole, I just want to start this thing off with saying big shout outs to the author, the creator of this whole thing, Yuki Tabata. The author of Black Clover has went through so much to get to this point, to cross the finish line, to reach the end of this whole thing, and just major congrats, because end of the day, it is not an easy task, and we've seen all of the trials and tribulations of this author and what he had to go through, whether it be, starting things off. And Black Clover, it had an insane ride, to say the least, not only within the series, within the story, but also even outside of things. From the very beginning of Black Clover, it was pretty much facing obstacles and facing adversity regarding things like people saying, yo, it's really similar to Naruto, what's going on here. Although there was quite a few comparisons to not only Naruto, to also Fairy Tail. Like, there was so many different things. Bleach, the way Asta dual wielded and stuff like that. There was a lot of comparisons that Black Clover had throughout its iteration. But at the end of the day, to me, for a long time now, I've always looked at Black Clover as, and I feel like even through to the very end of this story, Black Clover was somewhat of a love letter to the medium of shonen manga, shonen storytelling. Like, that's always, in my opinion, what Black Clover has truly embodied. It gave you a little piece of everything that you love from this whole, medium. It gave you the feel that you would get from Naruto. It gave you the feel that you would get from Bleach. It gave you the somewhat adventure aspect you would get from a One Piece. It gave you everything all within the confines of its story, and at the same time always making sure that even if it was somewhat similar, even if it was reminiscent of a different story, ultimately it still made sure to do its own thing in the end, and made sure that, yeah, it might have a trope that is similar to another series, but it was going to take that trope and go a whole different direction, twist it, turn it, and make it into its own. I mean, from the decade plus of this series going on, we've just seen so much. The series going from the weekly serialization to Yuki Tabata switching over to Jump Giga, which essentially was from having a new chapter every week to getting releases every so often. What is it, like every 2, 3, 4 months, something along the lines of that? Like, it has been just so many different changes, so many different obstacles, whether it be even when certain chapters were not to fans' liking, there would be an uproar. There was always something going on with Black Clover. So you could throw the argument that, for better or worse, Black Clover always kept you entertained, whether it was the story, of what was going on, or just the surroundings of the story. It made sure to keep you like, yo, dog, look out for Black Clover. And let's talk about a little bit of the switch from Shonen Jump to Jump Giga, because one of the main aspects and one of the main reasons why Black Clover did that whole thing was for Yuki Tabata, for his health, his mental health, for his family, for all of the things that he had going on outside of this. And of course, we already know that most authors come out and say, yo, working in Weekly Shonen Jump is hell. I think a creator recently returned to the magazine of Weekly Shonen Jump and said, hey, back in hell. Like, that's been the scenario, and that's been an understanding of what it's been like to be in Weekly Shonen Jump. But I also will say this, essentially what you put in is what you get out of things, right? And what I mean by that is, yeah, Weekly Shonen Jump is one of the toughest things to be in, to be constantly going in and hustling and, making sure you get things done on time and all of those things. That is definitely a very tall order, but at the same time, the reward that you get from Weekly Shonen Jump is massive. Black Clover got its anime fairly quickly, got a video game, whether it was a great video game or not. It got a video game, It had the anime run for, what was it, 160, was it 168 episodes? It was a lot of episodes, 170 episodes, somewhere in that ballpark. It got another season of the anime returning after all this time. It sold millions upon millions. Like, Black Clover was very successful, not because of the Jump Giga situation, but because of where it all started with Weekly Shonen Jump. So while Giga was best for the person behind the scenes, for his health, for his mental health, for his family and all that stuff, at the same time, Jump Giga isn't the greatest thing for all of it involved, which, don't get me wrong, you put the person before everything else. That's hence why I'm sure they did that. Why Tabata decided, yo, I want to keep my story going, but I'm going to go in a different direction. But at the same time, Jump Giga, for example, the fans that, you know, they really appreciated and loved having that weekly chapter, or, you know, just some more consistent and more timely releases, that went away because, you know, waiting every so often, again, like, let's just say it's every 3 months, and Tabata, because of who he is and the type of hustler that he is and the grind that he got and all of that stuff, he would make sure that, okay, you waited 3 months, so he would give you pretty much like 3 weekly chapters worth within the magazine. So it was kind of averaging, for the most part, since it went into Jump Giga, about a weekly chapter a month, which I can't complain. Personally, I would have rather just gotten a weekly chapter every month. I think that would have probably fed fans better. I think fans would have been more excited about things. But I say all that to say that Jump Giga, while it was great for the person behind the scenes and all that stuff, is not the best place for any series to be if they're trying to have a level of success that, you know, you could compare to like a My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, or anything like that, because it's too much of a gap in between releases, to the point where, and this is important, the motion definitely slows down. Like, having a certain level of motion and consistency with the motion is very important. And there's, I guess, consistency of like, hey, you know, every few months you're gonna get it, but it just isn't the same. So while I appreciate that Yuki Tabata was able to have a better schedule and all of this, that it impacted in a positive light for him and his family, at the same time, I'm sure Tabata, to a certain degree, also looks at it on multiple facets, as far as like, yo, great for the private life, but for the professional life, it probably wasn't the greatest. You know, having multiple volumes, what would it be, like 3-4 volumes a year that Black Clover would have? Maybe, I don't want to say 5. It would be about 3 or 4 volumes, let's just say, a year with Weekly Shonen Jump. You would get, what, about 1 or 2 a year with the Jump Giga volumes? Like, just not the same in any capacity. And again, while Black Clover had the foundation to keep things going, to keep the lights on, so to speak, to get the anime revival because of Weekly Shonen Jump, I'm honestly hoping that Tabata, whatever he does next, it's not in Jump Giga. I'm gonna just keep it real. Like, not saying that necessarily, ideally, you know, Weekly Shonen Jump is the way, but there's also a reason why a lot of creatives, despite the fact they've had monumental success and monumental series, do return to Weekly Shonen Jump. The reason why the author of Gintama is back in Weekly Shonen Jump with his new series, the fact that a lot of series they try to launch in Weekly Shonen Jump, is because the popularity and the success of your series ultimately is very important. And if you don't have that, you know, foundation that Weekly Shonen Jump provides, it's not the greatest fit. So Yuki Tabata, again, grateful so much for all of what he brought us and the fact that he was able to have a better schedule. But if he does return with some sort of sequel series or anything like that, preferably I think it should go to Weekly Shonen Jump or something more where you're getting a consistent and timely release where motion can be stable. Like, that's personally what I feel like. While Tabata was freed from the shackles of Weekly Shonen Jump, I also feel like, to a certain degree, and I gotta imagine he feels this too, that he's freed from the constraints of Jump Giga, where his series' motion just was never the same. And I know you're probably like, yo, bro, we deep in the video and we haven't even talked about the finale yet. That's just something that is important, and honestly, I wanted to touch all bases of the adventure of Black Clover as a story, but also everything surrounding it, because that's very important too. It's a lesson in and of itself of like, this is what goes with being a creative. What you put in is what you get out. You put in the work of doing the weekly grind that is very, very strenuous. The possibilities are astronomical. You go to Jump Giga, it does wonders for you, mental health-wise, health-wise, and whatnot, but the success is definitely not going to be anywhere close to what you experienced when you was, you know, doing the big enchilada, so to speak, the weekly Shonen Jump releases. So now after the top of the year, where we got the releases of the last few chapters, where it was the end of Lucius Zogratis, which I don't really want to stay too long on talking about Lucius. Thankfully, these chapters didn't even really go anything into Lucius Zogratis, because while ultimately he served his purpose and the plot twist was one of the greatest plot twists of the series, where you find out about Julius having the spirit of Lucius Zogratis in him all along. Ultimately, Lucius as a villain, a lot of people, I gotta imagine, would probably put some of the previous villains a bit higher tier, a lot higher tier for that matter, than Lucius. Like, you know, Patri probably would go a bit higher than Lucius for many people, because Lucius just, like, well, the constant monologues and the fact that he really, outside of Julius's sacrifice, didn't take anybody out completely from the realms of the story, that is a problem. And that is why a lot of people probably look at Lucius like, yo, bruh, you were supposed to be the, you know what I'm saying, the Thanos of this. What happened here? So yeah, coming fresh off of that, honestly, it felt like Tabata wanted to just completely forget about that and move forward in a different direction for the finale, where he solely focused in on Asta and Yuno's battle and the results of everybody within the Clover Kingdom, which, let's talk about Asta and Yuno's rivalry leading up into this, which I've covered this in a video before about their, you know, the rivalry or whatnot. But this chapter, or these 3 final chapters, honestly put forth and really put it nicely, the best way possible to say it, of what their rivalry was like. And honestly, it's one of my favorites in all of Shonen, because it takes the concept, it takes the trope, it takes the idea of something like a Naruto versus Sasuke, right? Because yes, the Naruto fandom was out in droves comparing Asta and Yuno standing, looking at each other, ready for their battle, and saying, oh my god, it's copying off of Naruto. Naruto fans, and you know, long time here, you know what I'm saying? Let's cut the shenanigans, okay? Naruto didn't invent 2 people standing across from each other, looking at each other before a battle. There's like 10 trillion other series that have done that. Yeah, it reminds you of that. Yeah, Black Clover clearly had inspiration from Naruto, but Naruto fans, y'all gotta cut it out already. We way past the point of that. And like I said before, even if it was inspired by that, it's because this series has always been that. It has always been a love letter to this shonen. It's always been a love letter to the love of this type of storytelling, of battle series in general. And when I saw that, I couldn't help but feel a little bit of a good feeling inside of like, yeah, it does remind me of a lot of the great battles that I've seen before, just starting off, before things even kicked off, because that's what you ideally loved from shonen storytelling. So I was very much so happy to see it. I thought it was awesome. And again, in comparison to, since Naruto fans wanted to do that, Naruto versus Sasuke, let's be very clear. Their final battle, both of their battles, but their final battle was Sasuke wanting to take Naruto's head off and basically have a coup, so to speak, of Konoha and the shinobi world. Like, he was like, no, this is mine. And also, it came at the last hour of Sasuke saying he was gonna be Hokage. Yuno and Asta's rivalry from the beginning has been both of them wanting to become Wizard King. Yuno and Asta's rivalry from the beginning to the end was never toxic. Yuno was never like Sasuke, where he's gonna do something massively evil and messed up, or that he's gonna try and do, which you could throw the argument that, yo, dog, that's what makes, you know, Sasuke more of a quote-unquote special character, that he was trying to do a revolution, or whatever you want to call it, because he was willing and able to go the distance, so to speak, to make change, even if it meant at a very much so drastic measure. So, of course, props to, you know, one of the originators of the thing. But Asta and Yuno's was never like that. It was always like two brothers that was trying to essentially level each other up, but still in mind of like, no, but in the end, I am gonna win. But yo, good luck to you, bro, and best wishes, and praying for you. Shout out to Sister Lily. Ultimately, it was never anything toxic. So again, this is one of my favorite rivalries, that it doesn't always have to be like, yo, they're gonna kill each other or anything like that. Sometimes it's just like, yo, bro, we're just having a battle to see who's better, and that's it. And Asta versus Yuno, from the beginning to the end, kept to, you could throw the argument, that promise of it never crossing that line. Asta and Yuno, that never went that direction, and I'm grateful for it, because I think that it separates itself and again shows that trope, somewhat similar to friends that have a rivalry, and that's pretty much where diverts because again, they're both like brothers and they loved each other from start to finish, never try to kill one another. It was never like that. And their battle demonstrated, yeah, Asta's anti-magic has always been something that is just astronomical. And some people, I would give credit to, some people are right as far as the fact that Asta's anti-magic in and of itself is arguably the strongest magic in a world where people rely on magic, right? Like if everybody's relying on magic and yet this one kid has the power to nullify everybody's magic, that's pretty much somewhat of a cheat code, so to speak, right? However, Yuno demonstrated something that like, alright, yo, you got anti-magic? That's cool and all. I'm just gonna put out constant 10,000 times the most powerful magic possible, so that even while you're trying to cancel it out, there's so much of it and it's coming so rapidly that you won't have time to cancel all of it out. So that's how Yuno was able to overcome Asta during the battle, so to speak. Obviously the ending, we'll get to that in a second, but that's how he was able to even keep up with him. And yeah, it's crazy to say that's how Yuno was able to keep up with Asta, because Yuno's always been the one that, you know, he was blessed by mana. Essentially the magic gods favored him, so to speak, yet Asta in the end caught the W, because ultimately, even with all of that being said, first of all, of course, it was Asta's destiny, so to speak, or it was just, in general, bro, if Asta didn't become Wizard King, I would have been shocked. Personally, I had many theories throughout the years that there would be co-Wizard Kings, or Yuno would eventually start his own kingdom, and like, you know, the nation that he was, I guess, a prince to, so to speak. Like, I always thought that that was a possibility as well, but Tabata said, no, they're gonna duke it out. It's not gonna be anything drastic of like, you know, hatred, but Asta came out on top despite the fact that Yuno gave it all. And that was also a great explanation, because there were some people that were disappointed that the battle was so short. Essentially, I think it was 2 chapters, and then the final chapter was just like showing everybody in the Clover Kingdom and the aftermath of like everybody's lives, which I want to say there was 2 time skips, right? I think it was 6 months time skip for the final battle, and then last chapter was 2 years, something like that, right? So 6 months after the fact, you get to see, you know, which at the end of the day, we don't know what happened in between those 6 months, which also Black Clover keeping in line with the tradition of shonen of, you know, multiple time skips. Naruto did it, Dragon Ball did it, Bleach did it, where you get, you know, a few time skips where you could fit more story in between those times if they decide to go back and do that, which props to that. And ultimately, yeah, Asta caught the W in the end. Yuno gave it his all, but I'm just gonna say that maybe it's not even plot protection, because just being honest, there was the possibility that Yuno could have won, because yeah, Asta's the main character, so to speak, the MC of this story. Yuno's dream and him being somewhat of a, what do they call it, a deuteragonist? I hate all these terms. Like, yo, bro, he was another MC, so to speak. He was just less important in this story than Asta. And ultimately, it was a possibility for Yuno to get some type of crowning, but the fact that they just kept it unanimous, that Asta won, despite all of Yuno's efforts, props to Tabata for going all the way with it. I know Yuno fans are very disappointed and angry, but it is what it is. That's just how the story went. And again, to be mad at Asta's anti-magic nearly 400 chapters in, either A, you never read the story, B, you never understood the story, or C, what are we talking about here, fam? He's had anti-magic from the very beginning, well, not the very beginning, but you know what I'm saying, first few chapters. We know he has anti-magic. That's just a part of it. And I think Tabata kept it very fair that the anti-magic wasn't completely working, because Yuno was really trying to overwhelm that. A great strategy that he came up with. So even this final battle being short or whatnot, it still had great strategy, great battles, great art. It was fantastic. Honestly, I can't complain about it. Yeah, it would have been dope to see Yuno get some type of crowning, but it is what it is. Asta won, and Asta became Wizard King in the end of this whole scenario. And you gotta imagine, again, them doing the time skip thing for this whole scenario was probably, there had to be some type of prepping and training, just because, yeah, this is the youngest Wizard King in history or whatnot, but you still need some of the maturing aspects, right? You gotta imagine that that happened in between this time skip of, like, if it was Asta beginning of the series, yeah, how can he be Wizard King or whatnot? So there's a maturing level, similar to like how Naruto couldn't be Hokage right away after they beat Madara and Kaguya. You know, he had to learn a little bit more of being, you know, more of an authoritative figure, so to speak. the same scenario more than likely happened for Asta, hence why Tabata did a little bit of a time skip in between the events. Then of course the aftermath and everything that went down in the Clover Kingdom and how it all played out. Some people probably will be disappointed of the exclusion of certain characters. I've seen some rumblings of people being a little bit disappointed that none of the Supreme Devil stuff gets addressed. Pretty much Tabata kept it that this finale, even with the in hindsight of the events of, you know, Lucius O'Gratis and the Dark Triad and all that stuff, he kept that in hindsight and didn't really focus in on it. Like, he really wanted to keep the ending as best as he possibly can wholesome. He didn't want it to feel a sour note or a dark tone, although some people are like, yo, there's still some questions that needed to be answered about Astaroth, the underworld. There's a lot of things that weren't addressed as far as the bad guy side of things. Just the fact of the matter is Tabata didn't want to focus on that anymore. He was kind of seemingly done with all of that, especially after Lucius, despite being built up. Well, we saw what happened with Lucius in the end. And for the most part, with the finale, many characters did get their happy ending. There's a few in particular that we'll talk about in a second that, yeah, Tabata, and I don't even want to blame Tabata. I'm going to more than likely put all of it on the higher ups, but we'll get to that in a second because there's quite a few things. We got Mario Leona is being courted, I want to say, by a few people. You know, that they're going after her affection in the Land of the Sun, although because she's a fighter, yeah, we'll see how that goes if we get an update or whatnot. But we got, that's, you know, the ending for Mario Leona. Yami and Charlotte happened. Yami quitting as captain of the Black Bulls. That was somewhat, I don't want to say unexpected, because Yami's always just been like a dude that just want to chill. You know, he was never really like he was just a cool dude. Like, and I mean that in the most awesome way, because that's one of my favorite characters of the story and whatnot. He didn't want to do it anymore, especially with Asta becoming Wizard King. He was like, you ruling over me? Yeah, no, thank you. I'll do something else, so to speak. You're not gonna be my captain or anything like that. So he gave himself like a different position as far as like being a Magic Knight, but is way more lax and is not anything of like being the captain of the Black Bulls anymore. So Yami, it's kind of par for the course. I'm glad he got the, you know, the whole scenario with him and Charlotte, so that's good. Same time, she got, you know, what she wanted at the same time. Then throughout the other Black Bull members, I feel like there was a character that I wish would have got more of a shine, so to speak, or a standout moment, and that's Magna. I feel like Magna probably should have had something other than, like, it just felt like, you know, beginning of series Magna, like just jokes or whatever. So we didn't really get much with him. A lot of the characters for the most part was just like, they're just living their lives happily and it's same old, same old. Charmy and Real, that thing right there, crazy. The fact that they ended up, what is it, 7 children, like that was just madness, to say the least. So yeah, props to Charmy and Real. I don't really know what to say other than, like, I guess other characters had different endings, so to speak. But yeah, it was interesting to see that. There was a good ending with Finral, him having, you know, he's expecting or whatever. Like, most of the characters got a decent ending from the Black Bulls. Nero, kind of just looking at the prince from afar, you know, the statue of the prince, or thinking of the prince or whatnot, Lumiere, and reminiscing or whatnot. I mean, what else could you have expected? That's just what it is. Nero was going to end, you know, it's not like there was going to be a Nero X Asta as much as people wanted that. That was never going to happen, so yeah. And then towards the ending, one of the most controversial points of the finale that a lot of people are upset, and I will rightfully say so, they're in the right to be upset, of the shipping wars not coming to an end regarding Mimosa and Noelle vying for Asta's affection. That did not get resolved. Honestly, I am not putting that on Tabata, because if you look closely at it, and I don't want to say anything about like it's mirroring, but it does remind me to a certain degree of the same type of scenario of My Hero Academia, where My Hero Academia's, you know, love situations and ships didn't get resolved in the serialized version of the manga. You had to wait until the, you know, extra chapter, and then it was just so much of, you know, a waiting period, so to speak, for that whole scenario to finally get resolved. And Black Clover seemingly did it, but I don't even know, like, because at the end of the day, I'm imagining what's going to happen is when the final volume comes in, there's probably going to be extra pages, and maybe that might get addressed. But regardless of what, Noelle, with all of her achievements and accomplishments as far as leveling up and everything, for her to, first of all, not get any promotion, like, it could have been that she's the head of the Black Bulls now, or, you know, something for Mimosa, nothing really came of it. And it's like, bro, again, I don't think that was Tabata's call. I think that the higher ups was like, we want to keep ship baiting for the final volume, and we want to keep ship baiting because that's a staple of this, you know, manga, the story or whatnot. And that's why it ended like that, because in all honesty, it just was like, what do you mean? You know what I'm saying? How do you end it like that? How do you condense down both of their character arcs, especially Noelle, to, yeah, I'm going to keep fighting for Asta's affection. On top of that, not even resolving it, not giving them any upgrades or promotions or anything like that. What are we saying here, fam? Tabata has done too much and tried to resolve almost everything in this finale. For him to not resolve that was a call from higher up. That wasn't a call from him. I'm sure that he already would have said who Asta was going to be with, how it was going to all play out. And that was probably the disappointing factor of the finale, because for the most part, everything else, the battle was great. Asta Yuno, everything about the finale was good. Honestly, I'm gonna throw the argument that this is one of the better finales of any Shonen Jump manga. Like, some people were maybe arguing that it played it safe to a certain degree, but even then it was pretty different than the average finale of, you know, a manga where it's like, okay, you know, the characters walk hand in hand and that's the end. Like, you got a big battle with Asta and Yuno going at it. You got a lot out of this. You got many characters resolving their relationships and stuff like that. Really, the only problem, honestly, is, for me personally, that I would look at it, is Mimosa and Noelle continuing on fighting when the story's over there. Like, again, we might have more in the final volume which could resolve those things, but that's the higher ups' call. I'm gonna just stick with that. There's no way that Tabata would have done that. Tabata, if it was his way, he would have 100% resolved all of that and ended it off with either Noelle or Mimosa being with Asta. And then, of course, the finale of the finale, Asta showing up very grandiose and basically saying, yo, dog, I'm the Wizard King. I think in the anime, they're going to change some things around. The anime ain't going to end exactly like that. We're probably going to get more screen time with Wizard King Asta. The drip was immaculate, incredible. It was amazing. It was fire to see that he achieved his goal. For a lot of people that were like, no, he actually achieved his goal in the end. It was at the very end that we got to see it, but Asta became Wizard King and ultimately caught the big W. So that was a great resolve as well. Honestly, aside from the Noelle Mimosa Asta, you know, love triangle situation or shipping wars, whatever you want to call it, Black Clover finale was great. It was done so well. It resolved so many different aspects of the story and is one of the better endings. Like, no shade to any other series, but I'm just gonna be honest with how I feel. Better than the Jujutsu Kaisen ending. Somewhere there in the ballpark of the original My Hero Academia ending, this is better than that. Outside of the shipping thing, I put this over the original My Hero Academia ending before we got the extra chapter in the final volume. So I'll put Black Clover over that too. Honestly, even over the Demon Slayer ending, like, Black Clover's ending is up there as one of the better endings of Shonen Jump. There wasn't a major outrage or outcry of you know, about this ending other than the shipping wars. Like, how can you ask for, well, you could ask for more, but I think for the most part, Tabata did the best that he could. And Black Clover, it's been one heck of a ride. It's been one heck of a journey. And one more time, congrats for the finale and finishing this series, crossing the finish line. If there is a sequel, if this is not just for, you know, an extra chapter and the whole theory of White Clover actually happens, I don't think it will be White Clover. It'll probably be something like Black Clover, the White Leaf, or something like that. It won't be White Clover because search purposes and algorithms, stuff like that. But if that did happen, definitely they got to go a route of going time skip wise. Asta's already been Wizard King for quite a bit now. The shipping, definitely, like, if they try and ship bait into a sequel, oh my god help us all. But yeah, congrats to Tabata, shout out to Black Clover. Let me know, please, what did you think of the finale? Is it one of the better finales of a shonen manga, Shonen Jump series? How did you feel about all the resolutions for the characters and the relationships? What did you think about the battle between Asta and Yuno? Asta coming out on top as Wizard King. How did you feel? How did you feel about the journey of Black Clover? Whether you started from the beginning or not, just hearing that it started off with, you know, Black Clover getting called out about, you know, being similar to many different series, the switch from Shonen Jump to Jump Giga. Like, what are your thoughts on this whole journey in and of itself? That Black Clover, it was a story with the story surrounding it, and I think that that's what also made it intriguing to many people, on top of the fact that the art style phenomenal. Yeah, it's done. The job is accomplished. Until the anime. That's all I have for this one. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. Peace in. Thank you for all of this amazing journey that we've been through.